Hello and welcome back.
The In Your Mind podcast.
How's your year going? Is it going in the direction that you planned? What is that? Or if it's deviated, how so? What have been the things that have been taking up your mental capacity and your focus and your energy?
In a larger sense, everything's heading in the right direction. All the details are unexpected because they're things you can't really plan for. Like how exactly the events are going to transpire for me to get there. I want to be successful with music. And that means connecting with a bunch of people who love music, earning enough money to support the lifestyle that I want to have. There's a lot of ways to get there. And you can kind of figure out, I need to make a lot of music and I need to meet a lot of people, but you never know how that's actually going to look, especially in hindsight, the people you meet and how that helps you or connects you to someone else and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I feel like it's going on track and things are looking good. What have I been consumed with a lot is probably just really trying to understand the underlying mechanisms of, I guess, just people most broadly, but specifically what makes people interested and what do people want to see? What are they looking for? And what's holding them back from that? Story is something I've been thinking a lot about. And what story are you telling with every single thing that you do? And what story are you telling yourself? And then how do those two things align? How is the story you're telling yourself different to the one you're expressing to other people? And I feel like that has been... There've been two different stories. And now I'm finally trying to align them with each other. How do I do this? Is it on? Is it on? Babe.
Yeah, it's on.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel similar with you on that and just feeling like it's kind of okay to let another vulnerability layer of myself out, saying actually what's happening truthfully. And I think it's always you feel way more bonded and close, and it doesn't feel like an act, because it's not an act, it's just you're just being real. The things that stop you from saying how you actually are or what you actually want to do, or things truthfully, once you just step towards that a bit more, it seems like it's never as bad as you actually expect it to be. And usually it's way better and you feel really fulfilled by saying something as truthfully as you can find the words for, or if you can't find the words, just saying, I'm not actually sure. But I'm learning that that's not as scary as I once thought, and it's really freeing and makes me feel closer to other humans, which is nice.
Yeah. When it comes to that, I've realized how much my actions follow my words. That problem doesn't really get solved until I acknowledge it verbally.
Because it somehow becomes real when you acknowledge it. Or you can look at it more objectively if you speak something out loud and it was once just in your head, but now it's out there. You can hear it and assess it as a truth, or you can just, it's kind of it was 2D before in your head, and once you've spoken something, whether it's an emotion, a feeling, or something you want to do, or a goal, it becomes more 3D in a sense, because you can assess it from multiple angles, because it feels less attached to you.
For me, it's more about the admittance of it, because I think I knew it was a problem and I understood the first step to correcting it. I just didn't want to admit to it because then I had to commit to fixing it, you know? Like I was holding back because once I said it, I'd have to do something to change it. And that would require discomfort and going towards fear and insecurity. That just took me a little while to do.
So how has that actually looked? Like, can you give an example?
I feel like I've felt distant from you for a while because I haven't been as vulnerable.
And how did you make that switch? What were the steps involved that made you feel comfortable to feel more vulnerable and open up?
Well, I think it had to get to a point where it was actually causing big problems. Like, it got to the point where if I ignored it any longer, then it could do real damage. And I'd gotten to this point before in a previous relationship, and I just let it deteriorate. And I think this time I understood that was going to happen. So it was a decision that I had to make. Will I let it continue and explode? Or do I do something? And I just thought, like, if I want the life that I say that I do, and if I am the person that I say I am and want to be, then I would at least try something. So I just had to admit it. And firstly, like the first admission wasn't admission for the whole problem. It was just like, oh, I just don't feel as close. And slowly, I dug through the whole chest, I suppose, and slowly but surely, like, pulled a little bit of it out at a time. And I'm still nowhere near the end of it. But I feel like the momentum building. Has your year been going to plan?
Yeah, I think it's been going to plan. I think my goals for the year were very broad, similar to you. And I think there were kind of like areas of domain that I wanted to like either find more information on or trying to understand what the difference of the versions of energy that I show up as in different environments. So like kind of relating to like coming into an environment or into a space or meeting people, or when I have prior expectations or I kind of like prime myself for the scenario, how that affects it. So, and what I enjoy and what I don't, and what I'm kind of just trying to navigate that a bit more, because I was really viewing myself as like more introverted, and that I really thrive in my alone time, and I get my energy from myself and spending time with myself, which I think are all still true somewhat, but also trying to challenge that and try and go, hey, like that's not the only, you don't have to be one or the other. Like you can do it all, you can do both. And just trying to like learn from the more extroverted people in my life of like how to go about that, and like the energy that they project when coming into a space, or when initially meeting somebody, or when you just initial meetings or initially showing up in an environment, and how that can really dictate how the whole thing goes. Well, it does dictate how it all goes. Like, so yeah, just playing with like, if I meditate before going into a uni tutorial, what state am I kind of in? What person am I like? Versus if I'm listening to like really upbeat music, like really like energetic, like kind of like dancey music, what do I bring? Versus doing nothing at all and just like a control condition, basically just like letting it take its course and looking at the differences between all of that. And I feel like I can't really conclude anything right yet because it's still, there's so many variables.
Not even broadly speaking, like more energy good, more energy bad. Generally speaking.
It depends if it's like feels forced or not though. Like sometimes it does feel a bit forced.
Yeah, it's got to be authentic.
It has to be authentic. And sometimes if I'm like, yeah, like, hey, how's it going? And then I'm like really not interested in where the conversation's going or like
in how's it going.
or yeah, exactly. It's like, I think the thing is it's just got to be fully authentic and I can't just fake that I'm interested in things. Like I have to be genuinely ask questions that I care about.
Maybe that's the conclusion.
Yeah. But then it's also interesting, like I feel like I'm happier just being an observer when I meditate or listen to just like healing frequencies before walking in. I'm just like pretty chill, but not sparking information, not really, just kind of, I do feel a bit like a fly on the wall in a way.
I'm gonna go, so it's moving. Rinano? Rinano! Oh!
I guess stories are going to be built regardless of whether you're intentional about them or not. So it's just important to make sure that what you're telling yourself is something you actually want to tell yourself.
Yeah. I do think a lot of the time about like what I choose to believe and whether I think it'll serve me long term or not, and whether I think it's beneficial to my well-being to believe that or not.
Yeah.
Because really, you don't know anything. Well, we don't know it. I don't really know anything, but we get to decide what we want to believe. And I think it should be as healthy of a place in our minds as it can be, if we can have some control over that. So, yeah. I feel like finding meaning that is aligned with what we value, what we find interesting, and what's healthy for us to believe is good. It's alright. It's kind of nice just to have like a nap.
Whoa, it's actually raining now. Well, purpose is really the thing that defines good and bad. Like good is in the direction of your purpose and bad is in the opposite direction.
But yeah, good and bad is subjective to each individual as well.
Yeah, and it depends on their purpose.
Yeah. So people have disagreements about what is good and bad based on like their trajectory of their purpose and what they wish to believe and what they wish to confirm.
And what they've been told, mainly.
Like we were talking about this the other day, like a level of like, you can't be 100% certain about anything. Therefore, we should hear others' perspectives on things. At least we should hear people out.
Or at least you shouldn't just be swept up by your own beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is like we are constantly trying to find information to confirm our prior beliefs.
Yeah.
So you'll still probably be confirming them in some way, but trying to have some sort of detachment and let in as much as possible, which is limited and very filtered, of what will actually reach you. But yeah, I think that's really helpful because then you can get a wider view.
Yeah. Yeah, even just being aware of all the different biases that we have, like confirmation bias, conviction bias, group bias, like all of these different ones. It's way easier to catch it. Like you still don't catch it
Yeah.
all the time, but it's way easier to when.
Yeah, knowing it exists and that is a real thing.
Yeah.
And that confirmation bias and group conforming is like such a huge thing. And there's so many studies based like showing how powerful it is that like we can be brainwashed like that, you know, like
Yeah.
if we're around a group of people who believe something, like we will answer what they've said, whatever everyone else has said, because we doubt ourselves more than we go. If we see 100 people saying one thing, we go, oh, well, my idea must be wrong,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think the detachment is important because you can get swept up in what other people think and it's not actually what you believe. And I think that's where you run into the danger. Like if you believe something because that's what someone else has told you and you've just confirmed it up until this point. The fact that you can say anything with utmost certainty is crazy. Because we have such a slither of the available information. We have no idea what we're talking about. And if more people agree with the same thing, it's probably more likely that it's incorrect.
I don't get that.
Because we're just confirming our own ignorance. Like, I would be more okay with everyone not knowing what's going on because at least we know that we've got our biases. Like if people in groups, generally people who think in groups are blind to group bias. We don't even know what's the best thing for ourselves a lot of the time. Like we just have an inability to see past our biases completely. So, yeah. And that's okay. But we just want to be aware that it exists.
But I think the purpose of information isn't to know the truth or not. It's for use, and it's for like how we could use that, like that mathematical equation to do other things, like how we can apply it to other things. But I think where we go wrong is going, this is the way and this is the only way. That is very confined thinking. But I think actually a lot of people would agree that we don't know what the truth is, but yet we want to make things and do things and have some sort of understanding about the world around us and space and all this. But we're only able to perceive things through the technologies that we have and the human perception that we have as well. So we can like hypothesis test and we can theorize on different theories that make sense with what we can perceive and the technologies that we use. But it's not necessarily saying it's the truth. It's just saying in this method of viewing this part of reality, this is some stuff that work. But
Seems to work.
In this specific scenario. And that's the use for like information and science and physics and all of that. Is just like understanding
but it's not an understanding. It's an assumption.
Yeah, but you're understanding something. Like it's not you know what I mean? Like you're understanding something within the confines of the theory.
So by that rationale, would you say if you can describe to a blind person what it's like to see, they understand what it's like to see?
No.
How can we understand things that we are completely blind to? Like we can't see the truth, so how can we ever tell if we're...
But we can't. But is that a useful thing to think? Like, is that useful for you? That we can never know the truth and that's blah, blah, blah. Like,
is it useful to me? Yeah.
How?
Because you're always curious. It's not about knowing the truth. It's about the continuous pursuit. Like, I think that's the beauty of being alive. Like the continuous pursuit of a potential you'll never reach. And I think people get so caught up in getting there and knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but
and the application.
Yeah. But I'm not saying that they'll ever know the truth. I'm just saying they're crafting an understanding of their reality, and through one lens that might have other applications that they can apply that same knowledge to something else, and they can make like that's kind of how technology works. It's just like
It's how it has worked.
Yeah, applying a set of probable rules to reality. But I think it's useful to do that kind of stuff, but I don't think it's useful to go, this is the truth and this is what reality is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think most people view it as this is what reality is. Like your language just then was, this is how it is. That's how it seems to be up until this point.
Up until this point, within these confines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think we're agreeing on the same thing. But that's like the difference between like, what is it called? Logical positivism, which is basically saying that that's that opposite of what we agree with. It's like the universe and what we witness and the science that we do, it's only worth looking at what we can mathematically deduce and make. Like, it's not worth even thinking about anything metaphysical because it doesn't reach materialized
Yeah, you can't
stuff.
reach any certainty or consensus.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
I mean, isn't wrong.
Yeah. That's one way of viewing it.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah.
It's just whatever floats your boat, you know?
Yeah. But, yeah. It's cool to put a word to it as well. Because, like, we learned about that last week. And he was like, yep. They don't even want to talk about the metaphysical stuff of free will determined. Like, cause they're like, you can't know.
Yeah.
So let's push that all to the side. And
I get like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're in science trying to do a scientific thing every day, you've kind of got to have a bit of that in order to want to do anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to have a bit of...
Well, to have purpose and passion, you got to have some sort of slither of... Yeah.
Like, if reality is just unknown and everything's unknown, and it's kind of like, why do anything? Or why have an opinion based on anything?
But you can also, like, you just go fully determinist and just like, well, I'm just a product of atoms in my body aligning in this specific way. And, like, I'll just live and align with that because it feels good and it seems to be working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think a lot of people, like realists, that's how they would live. And, like, if they're living true to that, then they're doing the same thing as what we are. They're just not thinking about it in the same way.
Yeah.
We're just ascribing different meanings to the same thing.
But also, I think it's good to have all these different ways that people think, because I think
it's necessary for sure.
Yeah, I think it's so necessary. And I think if we didn't have all these views and, you know, thinking modalities that spark a lot of like assumptions and curiosities, then we would have a way more limited understanding about the human mind and like how we ourselves perceive stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful.
Yeah. It's like the most valuable thing if you have a contrasting belief with someone.
You can learn so much.
You can deduce with much greater accuracy how true something is based on how many common elements are present in a variety of contrasting perspectives.
If you're going into it with that having that lens, not going.
I think that's where we're going, though.
Yeah.
like as a species, as our next step in
Mm.
evolution. Every way to create value in society right now like boils down to that, to be able to link things together in a creative way and draw commonalities between seemingly abstract areas of life
Mhm.
to create something new.
Mm.
Like,
Well, that's creativity. That's
Yeah.
very creative.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like we're using everything that we've said today has been said but not arranged in the way that we've said it.
Yeah, there are no original ideas.
No.
Yeah. It's just,
Well, do you actually believe that? I was just meaning like there's no original words. Like, well, there are, but concepts. Oh, this is tough.
well, it depends. Like, do you define, can something, an idea, if its parents are unoriginal,
Yeah.
does that make it unoriginal? Or if its parents are original, is it automatically unoriginal? Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Like if
You're saying like we've got all these words that have meaning and prior concepts attached to them
yeah,
and origins.
yeah,
So really they've been thought about in similar ways but probably not linked to all the things that you've just linked it to. Well, maybe not
in the arrangement.
in
yeah.
the arrangement. Like that could be unique.
Yeah.
But like positivism isn't unique. I didn't create that. Like
Yeah.
we were talking about it, we didn't create that. But we know it's something that exists because we feel it and we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think music's a great example because the same 4 chords have been used in thousands and thousands of songs.
Mm.
And they're even arranged in the same order, but it's the combination of the instrument that's used, all the melodies that are around it, and give it context, elicits a different emotion. And then you have vocals, the lyrics, the concepts, what they mean. Like the combination of all these things together is what makes it unique.
Mm.
But it can be built off something that's been done billions of times before. Even like 90% of the DNA of the music we listen to today is the same.
Or even in you. The
Yeah.
DNA within you.
Yeah. It's
98
it's-
or isn't it 99% of like your DNA?
I don't know what the number is.
Oh, it's something like that. It's either like 98, 99%.
Yeah. I read the 80-20 principle recently, and it just said that like 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the inputs. Or like more extremely, 99% of the music is built off 1% of the rules. So like 99% of people are different to each other because of 1% of their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the difference comes from a small amount of difference in the preset conditions.
But yet it can mask itself or seem purely unique.
Yeah, it can be harder to dig for it in a lot of things, but it's always there.
Yeah. But also humans are an interesting form of that because... Well, actually anything is an interesting form of that because the environment then too is like different. So if you think about a tree growing, 2 trees growing like a meter in space from each other, they'd be getting slight differences in environmental...
Yeah, fractional, yeah.
like real fractional, but still difference.
Yeah.
Like different amount of light going to different leaves, different amount of photosynthesis, different amount of feeling of wind.
And even the difference in the seeds that are planted, the
Mhm.
orientation, the seeds themselves.
Yeah. The soil, that it was the aspects of the soil, the nutrients.
Whether
it
an
can
animal
reach.
peed on one spot or another. You know?
Yeah.
How hydrated that animal was, how many minerals were in the pee, you know? Like
So many differences.
literally countless. Literally countless.
Infinite.
Because everything, you can always go back a step further and think of the preconditions of the preconditions.
Yeah. Right until the start of
Everything.
everything that we know of.
Yep.
Thus far.
Yep. Read my book. It's going to be crazy, man.
Shameless shout out.
It's not shameless. It is shameless.
Shameless,
It
yeah,
is
it is.
shameless because it's just that good, bro. When it's done, it's going to break reality. Like, the day those books come off the printing press, a black hole will open up and swallow up the earth.
Okay, don't talk that into existence.
You heard it here first. As you see it open up in the
Please don't.
sky,
You'll
they're going to be
know.
like,
It's
he was
released.
right. He was right all along. Yeah.
Okay, well, my brain has just been doop 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 doop
Bent
doop.
and twisted and
Yeah,
yeah,
rearranged.
that's good.
And I hope yours has too. I hope you've had some deep thoughts about this. If you've got any cool insights to share, let us know.
Or any arguments to make.
Yeah.
If you think I'm completely wrong,
Yeah,
please tell
we'd
me,
love to
and
hear
I'll
it.
happily tell you why you're wrong. No.
No. We can reach a better conclusion of the actual truth. Hey. Yeah. So message us at In Your Mind Podcast on Instagram if you're up for a little debate.
Philosophical D&M.
Yeah.
Dope.
Have a great day. See you next week. Bye.
Peace. See you later, alligator.